Hello and welcome everyone to this latest edition of Can Talk. Today we'll be diving into an insightful discussion on the educator's perspective, exploring what influences students and parents when making decisions about studying abroad in the Southeast Asian region. My name is Saqib, and it truly is a pleasure to have you all with us. A big thank you to our esteemed panelists for taking the time to share their expertise with us today. At CAN International, our mission is to guide and support young minds on their journey to studying abroad. Through discussions like this, we aim to provide valuable insights that help students make informed decisions about their higher education. Now, let's introduce our distinguished panel. From Vietnam, we have Stephen Walton, who is a university and secondary school counselor at the Canadian International School located in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. And next we have from Bangkok is Adam Pavlikovich, an admissions officer at the University of the Potomac based in Washington, D.C. And as usual, moderating today's session is Khwaja Umam, co-founder and CEO of CAN International with over a decade of professional experience in international education. He is a regular attendee at prestigious conferences for IEM like NAFSA, AIRC, and IACAC. Thank you all once again for being here, and let's dive straight into the discussion. Over to you, Khwaja.
All right, so thank you so much, Saqib. And before we dive into our very, very interesting round of interaction with these panelists of ours, and I want to share this with everyone that they both happen to be extremely seasoned professionals from their respective regions. So before that, I would quickly want each of them to introduce themselves to the audience before we, talk about a little bit of the facts that we have discovered from particularly Vietnam and Thailand with respect to the international student outflow. So yes, may we have Adam tell us about himself?
Sure. First of all, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. And also good job on my last name. Yes, my name is Adam Lee Pavlakovich. I'm from America. I'm American, but I lived in Bangkok for 10 years. For a while, I was doing admissions for the students applying to American universities with Thai students specifically. But I've transitioned over to being an admissions officer at an American university. So I deal with incoming applications. So I've seen both sides. I've seen the university side. I've seen the student side. And being in Thailand for so long, it's very, very different from any other country in Southeast Asia. So I hope I can shed some insight on that. Thank you.
Khwaja, you're on mute.
So sorry. So now could we have Stephen tell us about himself?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. Thank you for having me today. My name is Steve Walton. I've been in education for about 28 years now. Half of my career has been in the States and then half of it overseas. I think I've worked in about 6 international schools in 6 different countries. And more recently, I made the move to counseling. So I had been mainly a high school history and psychology teacher, but did a lot of just indirect counseling all the time with them, talking about university plans and so forth. And so I found myself really enjoying those conversations and helping them in a different way. And so recently I made the switch into university counseling. But I found certainly my experience working at the high school level for so many years the transition has been a little bit different, but there's a lot of transfer skills that come over with, being in the classroom this long and then also helping them in the counseling world as well.
All right. So thank you so much, Steve. And thank you, Adam, for both of you taking the time. And I see people joining in as well. So, once again, a very, very good morning to those joining in from the western part of the world. And of course, it's a pleasure having Adam and Steve with us today. So before we start picking up from what they have experienced in their decades of experience interacting with students, let's see some facts that we have tried to pull out. Of course, this is the latest Open Doors report talking about Vietnam and Thailand. I mean, we have picked these two countries because, again, you have a lot of students going to United States from this region. And as you can see, I mean, looking at Vietnam, it has been so consistent. I mean, from 2016-17 onward till date, over 20,000 students annually going to United States. And another very, very interesting trend that you see from Vietnam in particular is the fact that there is a large outflow of undergrad students. So students stepping out of Vietnam for undergrads, which usually, I mean, if I compare it with India, is not the case. So India still remains more grad focused. However, this is a very, very significant region that sends out students at the undergrad levels. And the other thing that you would see is, again, the states that are, prominently reflected over there: California, Texas, Massachusetts, Washington, New York. And so it's more or less those same states that you will see, whether we are talking of Vietnam or Thailand for that matter. But a significant, ranking that we see for Thailand is for the study abroad students. So that just reflects that it is, a destination that's U.S. students want to explore for their study abroad option. But then there is a consistency in both these regions of sending students to United States. So now, getting this perspective, now let's, ask from these minds who have been talking to numerous students who've been interacting with parents from their respective regions. So I would like to bring in Steve over here first and ask him, Steve, so what is the trend that you observe from students in the Vietnam region? Of course, you are from Ho Chi Minh City in particular, but I'm sure you can talk, as reflecting Vietnam as a whole, when they are choosing destinations for their higher education, with whether it's the US, UK, Australia. What is the trend that you come across?
Yeah, thanks for that question. All of those countries that you mentioned tend to be the ones that they're coming in with. When they say they want to, go overseas, I always say, well, what parts of the world are you thinking? Largely, sometimes it has to do with where their families are. So if there's a family involved in a particular country, that seems to be true. One of the things that I've noticed, the United States is always popular. It's probably the number one destination among the two schools that I'm familiar with here in Ho Chi Minh City. A growing trend, I would say, that we've noticed, that I work with a counselor as well, another university counselor at my school. And one of the things we've noticed is Australia seems to be becoming more popular. I think when we talk about this, I think one of it has to do with when we ask the kids this, they'll say a location. It's just closer to home, and so that's something that we're noticing. But yeah, the other ones were Europe. I'm not seeing as much with the UK. But again, I can only speak for a couple schools, and there may be others. We have a British school here in Ho Chi Minh City, so I'm sure there's a number of UK. They apply to UK. We that those schools will have it, but at the schools that I'm more familiar with, not as many. But Europe definitely, Australia definitely, US definitely, and of course, because I work at a Canadian international school, Canada, of course, is popular as well.
All right, so that's helpful. All right, so now at this point, I'll bring in Adam here. Well, you mentioned you've been around there, for almost a decade now, and you happen to be from US, by the way. So I mean, can you let us know that what are the different types of curriculums that you come across in this part of the world? I mean, if I particularly talk about Thailand, or if you want to reflect in general.
Yeah. If you don't mind going back to the other slide with the stats, because I think it's really insightful.
Sure.
And just to clarify too, when I was doing admissions consulting in Thailand, we also had a branch in Vietnam. So we got to kind of compare the different types of students. So I am pretty familiar with Vietnam students versus Thai students. And in my capacity right now, I work not just in Southeast Asia, but Asia pretty much. So like India, Nepal, Bangladesh as well. So I have some like insights on those kind of student demographics. But these graphs are really good with Vietnam and Thailand because they are like completely opposite. Even though they're so next to each other, they're complete opposite in terms of demographics who study abroad. Like Vietnam has a huge growing middle class. They are really like strivers, right? Like they usually really studious, usually really focused. A lot of them in our Vietnam branch were pursuing scholarships and stuff like that. In Thailand, when we were doing admissions consulting, it was the complete opposite though. There weren't anyone pursuing scholarships because there is no middle class for the most part. In Thailand, it has the highest wealth inequality in Southeast Asia. It's huge. And in fact, they have a gigantic gap in English as well. So while other countries in Southeast Asia kind of have this growing middle class a bit, Thailand does not. So when I was doing admissions consulting, it wasn't anyone seeking scholarships. It was pretty much like the top tier kind of very, very affluent group. They were going to private international schools that cost more than a university in America per year. So they weren't worried about cost or anything. Those kids were, had a whole support team working on their profile and their CV. Their parents really want them to get into Ivy Leagues and stuff. They weren't really looking at anything lower than, a UC school or NYU or, they're all kind of focused on Ivy Leagues and that type of group. And to be honest, we just didn't get any on the other end too much. And even in my capacity for the university I'm working at now, we have a huge interest from international students, but we don't have any Thai applicants. Because Thailand is just a very different beast. Again, with the English differences and the wealth inequality, you just have a very different group of people. So if you are focused on Thailand, I would not ever do the same approach as with Vietnam. I would focus on grad students. You're not going to have a lot of luck with undergraduate students. The undergraduates are the ones that either already have their sights set on specific universities or they're not ready yet for an American university. Just because of their education background. So grad students are really strong though, because you get people that have better English skills over time. They want to be more upward economically. They're not relying on their parents by this point. And the grad student market is strong, but it is a little bit harder to advertise to. If you go to Vietnam, if you go to Nepal or India, there's just agencies, a ton of agencies. Thailand doesn't really have a lot of admissions agencies. It's a really underdeveloped market at the moment. So you can just see it reflected in the stats as well. There's just, compared to Vietnam, way less international students. And in fact, it's way more of other people coming to visit Thailand. So I recently, just quickly anecdote, I was talking to someone recently who wanted to come in and set up branches here. I was consulting them and they ended up backing out. So you have to, because of just the market is so different than Vietnam. So you have to be very careful with how you're attracting students. Right.
Well, yes, I mean, that's pretty insightful. And however, I mean, we see, I mean, the undergrad is more or less, matching the grad outreach, grad outflow as per this statistics. So, maybe that trend is beginning to kind of change, or maybe they're getting influenced by the Vietnam numbers.
I think.
All right.
I think. Sorry, quickly for the undergraduate, it might be the same numbers, but I think the graduate market is something that can grow a lot. I think that has way more potential than the undergrad at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean that's the case. That's the case that has been for India, for that matter, like I mentioned. All right, so I would like to bring in Steve back. So, in your experience, what percentage do you think of students are choosing to, look at options outside their home country, and is there any specific trend that you notice?
Well, yeah, and I think I don't have exact numbers here, but it's in the international school world, it's very large. I mean, parents are sending their kids to schools to get international education, access to maybe Western style educations. They want access to advanced placement, college board stuff. They want Cambridge. They want IB. But so I think just in that dynamic, the expectation is that they are going to go abroad to school. If I had to guess, probably in the two schools I know, it's at least 90% of the students that are enrolled intend or at least want to go overseas. It doesn't mean they all do, because of other issues. Other issues, that price might be one or something like that. But yeah, I mean, if I had to ballpark it, at least 80 to 85%. So international students definitely intend on going overseas for their for college.
All right. So yeah, 85% is a very encouraging number. All right. So Adam, I would like to bring you in again. And so I mean, of course, there is a lot of Bangkok that we hear of. What are some other cities beyond Bangkok that you would want to name and highlight if somebody had to explore Thailand, when with respect to international student recruitment?
There's the other interesting part about Thailand is it is a one city country.
Okay.
So Bangkok has all the universities. It has all the government offices. It has all of the businesses headquartered in one city. Bangkok has around 10 million people. The next biggest city has around 200,000. It's a huge gap. Yeah. It's a one city country. Now, there are some private international schools in other places, notably Pattaya, okay, which is a couple hours away from Bangkok. The problem with Pattaya is that it used to have a lot more students, but kind of after COVID, that was where all the industry and manufacturing was happening. A lot of those people pulled out. So a lot of those international schools are suffering a bit with student intake. And then Phuket has some international schools, big Russian population, right now, big Israeli population. But most of those kids in those international schools outside of Bangkok are not Thai. So if you want to target Thai kids at international schools, it's pretty much only Bangkok, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay. So that's helpful. That's helpful. All right. So Steve, what are some common concerns that you come across? You are obviously interacting with so many students, in most cases, even parents, and especially at the levels of the undergrad. When students are seeking to go out at the undergrad levels. So what are those common questions that you come across from students or even parents, when they are looking at these opportunities?
Yeah, there's a number of them actually. So oftentimes the first thing when they come in and I'll say, are you interested? What, you want to come and talk about, uni list building and stuff. They either haven't really thought about it very much, or they've looked at the U.S. News and World Report rankings, and they've got their top 10, and they're all in the Ivy Leagues, and there's tier 20 schools, and so prestige. That's something that certainly parents want, and the kids want. But that's just part of it. Price is one. And again, it depends, I think, certainly on the demographics of the school. In some schools, I think you're going to have maybe wealthier populations where price isn't as much of a factor. I think Adam talked a little bit about that as well, in terms of like in Thailand, he said, some of the families, the international school families might be on the very, very wealthy extreme where, at some of our schools, we will have middle-class kids who go to international schools. And so price can be a factor depending on our demographics. Immigration is becoming an issue. I know Australia has been becoming, starting to cap the number of international students they're going to take. Canada had some caps. There was some confusion there. My colleague and I were reaching out to Australian and university reps to assure our students that the immigration policies at that particular time didn't directly affect them. But notwithstanding, those are still issues that get brought up because they're worried about, am I going to lose my, my visa in midway through my program or something like that. But in the U.S. lately, obviously with the new administration, I've had a number of my LGBTQ students come in saying, "Yeah, U.S. is off the table now." We try. I try to explain to them that that don't completely confuse this. I mean, there are plenty of university campuses are very progressive, so I try to remind them of that what you see on TV isn't necessarily the reality. And so I encourage them to reach out to representatives and try to get a different perspective than just what they see on, CNN and so on. The other big factor is crime. My son's in high school, and I asked him the other day, like, what are some concerns? And he said, crime. He said that kids say, yeah, oh, I'm interested in this place. And they'll say, oh, don't go there, you'll get shot. Yeah. And again, it's because of the CNN effect, this idea that the only news you hear out of the United States are these types of incidents. So people think that everybody's running around with guns and so forth. And so again, but these are very real issues. At least in the United States, crime comes up. When we talk about Australia or Canada or Europe, crime isn't a factor, but it is for these students, particularly when they're looking at colleges in urban areas. Parents particularly bring this up more so than the kids do, but it is brought up. So I would say those price, immigration, sort of politics, crime. Those are the big factors, the concerns anyway, that we see.
Mm-hmm. No, certainly. I mean, yeah. These are definitely points that even if I talk of India, our parents' primary concern, especially when they are looking at students at that young of an age, at the undergrad levels. All right. Now the another trend that is very popular particularly in this part and Thailand mainly. I mean, like you see a lot of campuses, of universities from UK and elsewhere, in this region. So how do you think is this impacting, the outflux of students? And do you think, students, or what is the impact of in general on students who are looking at opportunities to explore international universities? So are they wanting to stay back, or like they're still looking at options to step out?
Who do you?
Oh, that was to you.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to give like a brief example, in Nepal, right, the visa queue, I think, is around 350 days, right? In Bangkok, it's 1. There is no queue. It corresponds to the economic conditions in the country, right? I mean, most people aren't going to study. Thailand has very nice, public and private Thai universities, right? And the reason why most kids would want to leave is for some economic reason, right? They need more money or for better opportunities. Like I said, with the situation right now, it's either people that just don't have very good English skills or the economic means to do it. They're more likely to do like a work and travel, for example, over the summer. But like when I work with students in Nepal or India or Bangladesh, it's for economic reasons. It doesn't even matter what university. It's not about the university, it's about the location. So I think that's always going to be the most important thing, is the reason. Education, like, you know, let's all be honest, is accessible anywhere now. It's online. So if economic conditions make people move out, that's going to be why. But if economic conditions are good, and in Thailand, you know, it's still okay, to be honest. It's not, people are okay here. They just don't have a strong incentive to leave like a lot of other countries do.
All right. Okay, so let me bring in Steve again. Now, when students are taking this decision of going outside their home country at this young age, how much influence do you think, or what is the role of parents when they are making those decisions? And there are big numbers, as we can see, you know, going out at that age with respect to, you know, any other country for that matter, any of the neighboring countries for that matter. So what is the trend that you've seen so far?
Yes, so at CIS we follow, excuse me, I'm getting over a cold here, so I'm a little hoarse, I apologize. At CIS we follow what's called a best fit model. So when I do list building with my students, we look at different types of fit. We look at financial fit, we look at academic fit, we look at social fit, and we look at geography fit. And so we kind of go through all of that to try to get them a sense of choice. You know, where do they want to go? What are they interested in? And we have to be careful because parents also might have an expectation of where their child wants to go, and we respect that. So when I'm having conversations with parents, I do try to say, look, there are something like 2,500, maybe 3,000 universities in the United States alone. You know, they're not just the Ivy Leagues. There are, you know, there are great colleges everywhere. And so your child's going to find their best fit. And I try to get some buy-in. It's not always easy. I mean, mom and dad are paying a lot of money at these international schools, and they want to go to some of the big name schools, and we get that and we respect that. So there definitely is a push, and I think also there's a cultural aspect to it as well, in terms of certainly, you know, honoring your parents and what your parents want, and there's that as well. So what we try to do when we list build is we definitely try to get some of those top tiers in, but with the reality that, you know, at 8 or 10% or 12% acceptance rates, it's so difficult to get in, and I don't think parents always get that. They don't really realize just how hard it is to get into some of these schools. And so we try to, you know, find what we call, you know, reaches, safeties, and targets. And if we can kind of, you know, if we can please the parents to apply to some of the top tiers, but also look for some of the hidden gems and some of the schools maybe they're not as familiar with, but might be good fits for their kid in other ways. That's sort of how, at least I've found that it works pretty well. We definitely let mom and dad have a say, but at the same time, you know, it's their child who is going to live there. They're going to have to live there and go to school there, and sit in the classes there, and they've got to like it, because at the prices that the schools are charging, you want to make sure that your kid's happy, regardless of where it is. And so there's a bit of negotiation, I would say, and parents are very, very wonderful. They are, and we respect them, and we definitely want them to be a part of the conversation as well. But we try to get the kid to drive it. We always say, look, let your child kind of drive this a bit more, because it really is their life now. They're the ones who are going to be experiencing all these things. So you want to make sure that they are really happy with their choices.
Well, that sounds that you're doing a great job in balancing, the parent and the student drive. All right. So, well, I would stick with you, Steve, and I would want to know from you, uh, how do you view your role when universities are reaching out and when they are into international recruitment? So, how do you see yourself supporting these international universities, and uh, how important is it for them to connect with you and you know engage with you when they are visiting any region, and of course talking of your region in particular?
Right. Well, again, come visit. Again, my son is going through it right now, and I asked him, what do you enjoy most? Like, do you like webinars? Do you like? He said face to face, and
Right.
he said, Dad, I can tell you, face to face matters.
Yes.
So face to face visits either at the larger fairs. I asked my son, does he like the smaller ones when it's like, maybe 4 or 5 schools visiting, or 2 schools visiting, or a fair? He said, I really like the fairs. The fairs are kind of fun. You get a big range of schools, but definitely face to face. Having very dynamic reps. Again, coming from my son, he said that there were some reps that did not really present very well, and their tables were kind of empty at some of the more popular schools. And he said, because word got out, the rep isn't very nice. Other reps are very dynamic, pull in kids right and left. And I don't want to name any of the schools, but Adam came home with a couple of schools that I really wasn't familiar with. And I'm in, I do university counseling. I'm like, I'm not familiar with that. He's like, oh, the rep was amazing though, and really, kind of opened me up to different ideas on how about the school. I'm like, wow. At a uni fair that we had this year at my school, there was a school that I knew well. And I had some students come in and say, yeah, I'm interested in this school. I'm like, really? I mean, I know it, but why? And they said, oh my gosh, the rep was amazing. I'm like, that's great. And there were like 3 or 4 kids coming and going, same rep. Yeah. Okay. So definitely that makes a difference. But I would say face-to-face is probably the best. Also, this is silly, but kind of, these are teenagers. They like swag. They like stuff. They particularly like pens, believe it or not. Kids will talk about who has the best pen out there. And, and kids have said, hey, I'm interested in the school. Why? They have a good pen.
Right.
Who knew?
Who doesn't like
But yeah,
swag?
definitely face to
I'm
face.
carrying one myself.
And I have one from a school right now that I use all the time. I love that pen.
Right.
And the kids see me using it all the time.
Right.
So all of it matters, but it's definitely just making those connections is so important, the face to face. And when we have a fair, we shout out to everybody to come. We get offers all the time to come to visit, and our school has a block of time every day from 1 to 1:40. Where universities want to come, we have that time. We just organize it with them, and sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 10.
Right.
It just depends. But yeah, the more you can get out and talk to kids, the better.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think next time we should bring in your son for some great insights as well. All right. So Adam, could I bring you in here now? So now, of course, universities are traveling and they travel around the year, around the globe. So what is the best time for if you're talking of high school visits in particular? What is the best time, do you think, for them to travel to this part of the world?
Sure. So, I mean, I'd like Steven's input on this too, but at least from my experience, if you're going in the fall in Southeast Asia, the best block is usually around like mid-September to mid-October.
Okay.
And it follows the international school schedule. Thai public schools follow a different schedule, but you're not going to be talking to them, so it doesn't really matter. You're at least in Thailand specifically, you want to follow international school calendars, and yeah, that's about the block I would give. Thailand has a lot of holidays. There's a lot of other holidays in Southeast Asia too, but that block, most people are concentrated in school.
All right. So yes, Steve, would you like to shed some light on that as well? The best time to
Yeah,
travel?
excuse me, sorry. Yeah, no, I would agree. September, October, it's becoming real for the grade 12s now. They're realizing, oh my gosh, I really, this is happening. So those are the key times. Even into November is fine as well. I would say September, October, November. Those are usually the busier months for college visits. I know Ho Chi Minh has a couple major university fairs where like almost 140, 150 universities come, and they come over 2 days because Ho Chi Minh is big. So they'll have it one day in one section of the city where all the international schools in that region go to, and then in that area go, and then the next day, same thing, different part of the city, the rest of the schools go. And I would also, springtime as well, I think is a good time too. I mean, a lot of the certainly US applications are done. Australia is still starting up and kind of going through some of it. But then that's when you target the grade 11s. You'll get less of the interest then, but it's never too early to start getting the grade 11s interested, because that's going to be them. Sometimes it's still a little hard for them to realize that that's coming down. But yeah, those would be the two. But I think Adam's correct, though. I think September, October are the big ones.
All right. So before we uh, get to our last question to Steve, I would request our attendees, if they have any questions, then they can write them down in the chat box area, and we will be happy to take them. And please, we encourage you to ask questions. Of course, we are recording this session, and we will be sharing the recording with you as well. But still, if you have any questions, we'll be happy to address them right after we finish our last question. All right. So my last question to Steve is that in your experience of almost over 2 decades, what you see is the most effective way of universities, or for universities to connect with students. I mean, there's high school visits happening, or there are fairs for format being followed, even virtual engagement. So what do you think is a good way, or a good mix is the best thing? What is your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to what I had said earlier, I mean, making those really good personal connections are really good. We get, webinar stuff from universities sometimes, and we have a big chat group. We have a Google chat for all of our grade 12s, and I push them out there, and I'm always like, hey, my colleague and I will push them out saying, hey, there's webinar here, webinar here. Yeah, the webinars just aren't happening. I think it, honestly, I think they get COVID vibes. I think the kids, when you tell them a webinar, they're all of a sudden they're back in 7th grade and they're in lockdowns and COVID, and they just don't want to do that anymore. So I think that helps a bit. Having a social media presence, I think, is important. Having an Instagram account, having a TikTok, if you've got that, they're on there all the time. So you got to kind of go where they are. So I would hope that I think most universities have an Instagram account. And hey, at the job fair, or at the job fairs, excuse me, university fairs, say, hey, follow our school, follow this, follow that. So that's a great way for them to stay connected. And I'm not on Instagram much, but kids love it and they're always on it. So I think certainly having a really strong social media presence and being clever, I think, with their advertising. And I've noticed some of the TikToks and some TikToks and some Instagram accounts use their mascots in funny ways to advertise their school, and kids like that. They're kind of fun little clever ways to use your mascot. Yeah, but again, that's probably it, in terms of making that. And certainly, like I said, we're happy to help you. But yeah, I would say that. And also, I just lost my train of thought, but it's mostly about just making sure you follow up as well. I think if you want to, and if there was a kid that really you felt, hey, I think he or she had some more questions, I really enjoyed, reach out to them and say, hey, really enjoyed talking to you. If you have any other questions, let me know, like in a personal email. I know that could be difficult to do, but certainly that helps grow the school and gets kids talking about it.
If I could add one thing on top.
Yes, I was coming to you, Adam. Yes,
oh yeah, sorry. From a visa perspective, because I do work a lot with like visa interview prep and stuff like that, it helps. I get worried sometimes when I hear the student is just like, I really like that rep, and then they go, because they're going to be they choose the university and then they do the research sometimes, and that will ruin their interview with the embassy sometimes. So I do suggest universities to also, along with the rep and the good advertising and social media, but also really communicate the unique selling points of your school. And
True.
So the students can choose it so it aligns with them. And when they are asked, why did you go to the school, they can have a better answer than like, I like the rep or the pen was nice, because it's always really painful when they like a school and get rejected because the visa officer decides it wasn't a right fit. So like, if you're able to equip them with those facts, it really helps too.
Right. All right, that's very, very insightful, gentlemen. I think for everyone who's listening to us right now, and also for those who would be listening to us or going through our recorded session, I'm sure they would find it extremely helpful. And like I said, we would be happy to take any questions that may come to your mind. Please write them down in the chat box area, and we will be happy to take them. Our panelists would be happy to address them as well. And while we wait for any questions to come up, I just want to quickly let everyone know that we have these high school visits coming up for our spring time for the different parts of the globe. So Latin America, India, Southeast Asia, Mexico, Pakistan, and the Middle East region. And I don't see any questions coming in there. And so if we do not have any questions, we can wrap it up, because as I said, we are recording this, and we will be sharing the recording with everyone as well. Well, so thank you so much, Adam and Steve, for taking the time and joining us. And it has been extremely, extremely helpful. I'm sure there will be many takeaways for our university representatives. And until we meet again for another engulfing round for this region with you all. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you.